Hello, and welcome to Sound Barriers. We are the podcast that says what needs to be heard.
Have you ever wanted to know more about the Scottish music industry? Well, on Sound Barriers, we're conducting interviews with artists, artist managers, promoters and more, exploring what it's like to be in the music industry in Scotland.
How exciting. I'm KB.
I'm Joseph Smith.
And in today's episode, we're taking an in-depth look at the Scottish music live scene.
Today's guest is Gareth Gonet.
Gareth is the founder and CEO of B12 Entertainment, and since 2018 they have been a brilliant promoter for up-and-coming bands in Glasgow and surrounding areas. Hi Gareth!
Hi Gareth.
Hello, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and great setup you've got. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about B12 Entertainment?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, we formed in 2018. It came about kind of by accident, so I'll not go into too much depth, but I always had this idea in my head about I'd love to put a gig on. I don't know why. So I was working at the time for IBM as a project manager. I was travelling around quite a lot, so it was quite difficult to kind of have something else going on the side, but eventually bit the bullet. I was chatting to one of my friends. We're just over at one of my mates' houses one night, and we're just having a few drinks, and he'd mentioned as well at some point in the past that he'd also like to put a gig on. So I thought, right, I don't really have a clue what I'm doing with this, so it just feels easier to do it with someone. So we agreed to put a gig on together, and it was
just go for it.
Yeah, just go for it. So that was going to be February 2018, and these conversations were prior to New Year, so I don't know, maybe October, November time, and then we started planning. And then just on the lead up to Christmas, we had everything booked in. We had the act booked, so it was actually Declan Welsh and the Decadent West, and I won't take credit for booking them. It was him that booked them. I don't know how.
And that was your first gig that you organised?
It wasn't. It didn't end up being my first gig, so I'll explain why. So he'd booked them, and I was doing all the kind of nuts and bolts stuff, booking the venue, and they weren't as big as they are now at the time, but they were still at a kind of reasonable level. And because we were booking them in Greenock, so they were quite happy just to go and come and play in a different, play in a new area. And then as we're getting closer to the gig, we kind of started having a few creative differences, if you like, because my vision my idea has always been to look at the long game, try and make everything look as good as it possibly can, and that usually means spending a bit of extra money. So whether it's paying for a bit of extra lighting, getting videographers to the event, getting professional photographers along. So I was wanting to do all this kind of stuff. I wasn't bothered about making a penny from the first gig. In fact, I was looking at it as a long-term project, if you like. We're going to do more, so we need to make the first one as good as possible and make it look good. And if we've got a decent crowd in, and we've got a decent backdrop, so it looks kind of professional, and then we've got like a video film from it that we can, after the event, we can then use that to sell the next one. He wasn't wanting to do any of that. He was just wanting to make it kind of. He just thought, right, we've booked a good headliner. That's all you need to do. So we're kind of butting heads. And then it was just after New Year. I was trying to get a hold of him, and the gig was on sale at this point, and he just didn't reply to a message I sent for about 5 days. And I just thought, right, maybe he's been like partying a bit, and he's just he's maybe just having a few down days. But you know that way when you have like a gut feeling like something's not right. And then he messaged me, and he was like, "Look, I'm so sorry." He said, "I really want to do this myself. I know you've been a big help, but yeah, I'm just going to do this on my own." So I kind of felt like I've kind of been booted off my own
project,
my own project, even though it was the two of us, but it was me that came to him first, and he booked the band, but it was still a joint venture. It wouldn't have happened without the two of us. But it's not really my style to hold a grudge or anything like that. So I just thought, like, mate, don't worry. I was a bit like miffed, yeah. I was a bit gutted, because you think you start to.
It's exciting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought, right, I'll use this as fuel. So I thought, right, that's cool, mate. I'll start my own thing. And so I booked another gig for a couple of months later, and I called it. I had to come up with a name, so I decided on B12 Entertainment. Because my son's called Bobby and he was born in 2012, so I just thought B12, and I wanted I wanted a kind of generic name because at that point I didn't really know what I was going to do with the business. It wasn't really a proper business at that point, but I wanted to start an events business, but I was thinking maybe we might move into doing comedy shows and things like that. So I didn't want a kind of niche name that really tied us down to one kind of style of event.
Just kind of give you plenty of scope to evolve and develop it later on if need be.
Exactly, and it just it went on from there. The first couple of years, we only did 2 events in 2018 and then 2 events in 2019, and then the big plan was we hadn't even done a gig in Glasgow at that point. It was all just in Greenock, and then the plan was right. We'll do our first event in Glasgow in 2020, and I'll start kind of going through the gears. And because I did an event in 2019 actually, and I lost quite a lot of money on it, and it kind of killed my mojo for a little bit, and so I was deciding where, and I was working away, and I was I didn't have a lot of time to do it. Like I was having to just kind of squeeze it in.
Find the balance, kind of get the juggling act going a wee bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So but then I thought I snapped out of it towards the end of 2019. And then I thought, right, 2020, I'm going to start going through the gears, and then we all know what happened. Not much happened in 2020, but
Nothing's ringing a bell, no.
yeah. So we're all shut indoors for a while. So that all went on the back burner because I think I had an event booked for April or something, and then I also had a comedy show booked in because at that point I was just trying different things out. So we had a comedy show which was supposed to be in Greenock in April at the Town Hall, and it was the comedian Gary Faulds.
Well, I don't really know, so how do I just chip in? Never that. I know the name. I think.
So he was doing a tour, and I noticed that he wasn't coming to Greenock, and I knew he was popular in Greenock, so I contacted his management, and I was just trying different things at that stage. So that ended up not happening, and then. So anyways, it's lockdown, we're all shut indoors, and I thought I want to still keep this going. I'd really get the bit between my teeth by that stage, and I was quite frustrated that I couldn't get things moving. So we were doing, remember those little Facebook Lives?
Yeah.
So we started off with them, we'd do them like at the weekend, and we'd have like a link where people could donate to charities like local food banks and things like that, just to kind of keep things moving.
Keep the momentum of
Absolutely.
the name, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't want the thing to die, and I had to. Also, when I was still working the whole time, because I was able to work from home, so it's not as if I was just sitting around doing nothing. But I'm quite determined. I always need to.
I've got to keep moving. Got to keep kind of actually.
Yeah, I need constant activity. Otherwise, I kind of things go a bit sideways for me. So that was that, and then we were doing streamed gigs. So we'd book kind of similar setup to this with like the cameras, and we'd have the sound plugged in, and with the bands play live, and we did one live pay-per-view type thing, and then we did one which was like we just put it out for free. It was just pre-recorded, and I lost a fortune on that, but
it's an experience, man,
Yeah,
isn't it? You know what I mean?
And I certainly think B12 is now a very well-known name around Glasgow. I mean, most of the gigs that you see on Instagram, your name pops up, and you're given so many opportunities to bands that aren't necessarily getting the same types of gigs. And I think that's why it's very important to have this conversation today about the live scene in Scotland. And you're definitely coming from a place where we want to hear from. And I'm going to spark off a conversation now. We would be interested in your view of the current live music scene in Glasgow, or in Scotland in general, I suppose, and if there's any aspects that you find that are vibrant and unique to us, like what makes the music scene in Scotland stand out so much.
Good question. So I think Glasgow's got a great music scene, and it's kind of like the base, if you like, of the Scottish music scene, because you see there's bands from all over Scotland popping up, but really they want to get down to play in Glasgow, even compared to Edinburgh. And we've tried some to do a few bits and pieces in Edinburgh, but it's just not
the same thing.
Yeah,
No.
there's just not the same appetite. And I think there's a great sort of I don't want to use the term production line because that makes it sound like people are manufactured, but every other week there's a new band popping up, and because we're a grassroots promoter, if you like, so they usually will get in touch with us looking for an opportunity to play. Like the midweek Nectar shows that we do, so they're kind of designed for bands who we've not worked with before, or who are just looking to get out and play one of their first gigs, or sometimes it'll be a band that maybe played a few gigs and they're just looking to play live, and that's what we've got available. So that at the time, so that's what we offer. Because usually with those, we don't book. I deliberately only book those maybe like they only really get booked a few weeks before they go on sale, because the kind of some like the headline shows and the gatherings and things like that, they're booked like months in advance. So that was the reason for creating the midweek. Sorry, I've not lost the thread. Don't worry, I'm getting round to answering the question.
You're fine.
So they were the reason I created those is just because we were getting so many requests from bands who were maybe looking for the first gig, or that they were still in the early stages, looking to play live, but I wouldn't be able to offer them anything until maybe 3 or 4 months' time. So I thought, right, well, we'll start doing midweek gigs, and we'll kind of leave it late to book them. So when bands email me or DM us, or however they choose to get in touch with us, we've always got something that's fairly soon coming up, and those fill up. Like sometimes there'll be one that's maybe about 5 weeks away, and I've not booked one band. And within the space of a week, I'll be able to fill it just on new bands that I've not even heard of before getting in touch. So, and I think what's key as well is the fact that there's shows going on all the time, either through ourselves or other promoters. There's like promoters big and small, and I think that's crucial as well, because if bands don't, or if people going to gigs don't see there being an opportunity to play, and I think this is maybe part of not the problem with Edinburgh, but the reason why there's much more of a scene in Glasgow than in Edinburgh, because people who are maybe musically inclined and might not be in a band at the time, if they're going to these gigs, they see a route for them, so they'll get a band together. We used to see that even with the gigs we put on in Greenock. There's quite a lot of bands have kind of popped out of the Inverclyde area, and they were all going to those. I didn't know it at the time, but they were going to our early gigs, and they've since told me, "Oh, yeah, we went to one of your gigs before lockdown, and so we got a band together." Or,
That's so nice to hear, though.
Yeah, it's been a bit of an inspiration.
Yeah, and it's and I think that's on Glasgow. That's on steroids, if you like, because it's not just like me doing shows. There's all sorts of other promoters. So I think that's key, and the fact there's big shows coming here, because it's like a kind of major city for touring bands, if you like bands that are doing a European tour or a UK tour, they'll usually come to Glasgow. So there's that. There's big shows happening here as well, so you can see you've got that kind of aspiration, if you like. You can see, and then because usually it's DF or sometimes PCL or 432 that are doing those shows, but you might be able to get a support slot with them on one of those shows. So you've actually got a chance within maybe only being a band for a couple of years. You might be able to play on one of those bills. It's not like we're away up in the Highlands or something where we're
quite central, so it does make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I really feel that you've provided a great platform, as you say, for new artists and people that are motivated to go on and try and get through with DF and stuff like that. I think it's brilliant what you've started.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll take it on to the next. I was just going to say, how important is it, do you feel, do you think that local identity and roots are to the Scottish live music scene?
Interesting. I was thinking, that was the one question I was thinking about when you showed me the iPod. I'll give away a secret, but I did see the questions before we hit play. But I just had a quick scan of them a couple of minutes before we went on, and I started racking my brains on that one, because that's I have noticed that increase over the past few years, because even looking back to like when I was younger, you didn't see outside the kind of traditional music, you didn't see a lot of people putting their Scottish identity across in their music. It kind of started in the 2010s, maybe you would start to see it. There was like Las Vegas, and then like Jerry Cinnamon popped up, and now you notice quite a lot of people are not putting on an American accent, or sometimes even like you'd see bands from Glasgow trying to put on a Mancunian or like a Cockney accent when they were singing. And
sometimes it just does not work at all.
And then quite a lot of people just naturally sound more American when they're singing, because that's how they've kind of grown up listening to American singers. But you see, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you see a lot of people, a lot of artists are, they're not really afraid to, because I think for a while I remember growing up, people would always say, oh, the Scottish accent, it's dreadful for singing, and you'd think of like unless you're doing kind of more like Proclaimers style stuff, it works for that, but then it doesn't really work for like rock, but I think it can.
It's become such like a cringe culture in Scotland to sing in your accent, but like you said, there's been such like a surge of bands that are coming out and just singing in their accent, or even like half of the time they're just speaking what they want to say in their music, which is so nice to see now. And I think there's definitely been influencing the shows that are happening in Glasgow, because there's new bands, like you said, there's new bands every day that come out, and they're all so different and unique now. But it's nice to see bands showing their identity on stage as well.
It's been reflected through the music and through the events, as you say, that's coming through. There's more of it, as you said, that's happened post-COVID.
Yeah.
Definitely. And that's a brilliant thing, we think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
Smashing.
Amazing.
In your opinion, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that are facing the live music industry for the venues and the promoters in Scotland right now? What are the biggest kind of challenges we're looking at?
It's kind of depressing to say. Money's always an issue.
It's always the issue.
Just with everyone's costs are going up. I've got no idea how much it costs to run a venue, but I'd imagine it's a lot more expensive than it was 5 years ago. And you're not really making any more money than you were. You might be able to raise your rates a little bit. And that's a challenge for us, because even when we first started out, it was just me, and I kind of had like some savings that I could use. So if I lost money on a show, it didn't really matter. I didn't have anyone working for me at the time, so I didn't have any kind of fixed costs every month.
And the pressure that comes with that as well, by the way.
And when you're doing more and more shows, even sometimes you, sometimes even just when you're waiting to get paid and things like that, because we'll always try and like pay everyone straight away when someone sends an invoice. As soon as I see it, I'll pay it. But then sometimes when we'll be waiting on ticket money, sometimes it takes depends who it's from, but sometimes we'll be waiting the best part of a month on that. And then
ticket money, from like Skiddle and.
They're usually quite quick. I don't want to start like naming.
No, but ticket websites and stuff.
Yeah,
can take a while.
It's not anyone's like trying to pull a fast one on us. It's just everyone.
No, it's just
like,
the process, man. It just takes time.
Yeah, bigger companies just take longer to do things, and then so sometimes we'll be like, right, well, in theory we've got enough money to pay everything, but I've had to use I'm having to like put my own wages into to pay invoices, and then before this ticket money lands. So that's not even. Because we'll have, and then I've got people to pay who do stuff for us every month. But even my challenges are nowhere near what you'd face if you were a bigger organisation or a venue. The overheads for that would be far greater. And you see things like the Music Venue Trust, which I think is a great thing. They managed to get, I think, was it £1 from every arena show, is now going towards the Music Venue Trust to help like grassroots venues. But sometimes you feel like that's brilliant, but and also for artists as well, there are some funding routes, but I think that is quite limited.
Few and far between. And do you also feel sometimes it's not always easy to access these things for new artists? They don't know about them.
Yeah.
That kind of takes us on. What's the kind of solutions to this, do you think?
Yeah, and that's a $1 million question, if you like, because it is. In theory, it seems wrong that in an industry through which millions or billions of pounds pass through every year, there's people are having to apply for funding, but you understand that if you're at the sort of entry level, if you like, and you're not generating loads of money, that it's then just because someone up here's making millions, it doesn't mean that you should be too. But at the same time, I feel that sometimes that there could be a better distribution of the money throughout the industry, particularly when some of the organisations who are involved in making the money at the top level, they will in time benefit from some of the grassroots artists who eventually will be the ones who they're making lots of money from. But in terms of finding a solution, that's tricky. For ourselves, there's only so much we can do, so we really just live kind of hand to mouth. But we'll still we have certain incentives, if you like. We'll put on some events with like prize money involved, and we've got one like Breakthrough where people vote for their favourite act on the night, and then the winner gets like £1,000, and £1,000 isn't life changing, but for a band that's just starting out, that could be some studio time or touring costs and things like that.
I can imagine the impact that has on their kind of social capital as well, because they're getting a name for themselves. Things are actually kind of picking up for them as well. Do you know what I mean? A bit more confident in the industry starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's what we try to do, but I wouldn't say that's an industry-wide solution. Like once every 3 months we do give someone a grand. Like, that's not going to change the world, but I think probably better distribution of the money that runs through the music industry. And I think what I mentioned with the ticket money, the ticket levy or whatever it's called, with some of the money going to grassroots venues, £1 from every arena show, I think that's a good start. I think it'd be good to see some of that going to artists, particularly from those shows at the top level where tickets are hundreds of pounds. Could that flow back into like a development fund for grassroots artists? That would be good, and particularly it's not just pure charity, because again some of the same organisations that are making those money from those shows that are charging hundreds of pounds for tickets just now, some of these grassroots artists who they've been helping, well, they will eventually be earning money from. So it's almost like a farm system, I feel like, that they could create. But instead I feel that artists in the early days, you're pretty much left to fend for yourself, and then only when you're in a position to start making loads and loads of money for bigger organisations, it's only at that point that you might start getting a bit of help. And
That's when they start showing interest.
yeah.
It's the support that you need from the start, and not just for when they think that you need it. Like, you need it from the start.
Absolutely, and that's what I don't want to sound like I'm being critical, because I don't mean it this way, but sometimes I do find that some organisations who give out funding, like if you have a look through some of the people that are getting funding, you're like, that's not really always who needs it. And it's kind of people who are maybe starting to get a bit of traction, and they're like, oh, we'll give you some money to go and record an album, but
It's a tricky conversation to have.
yeah.
But this is a safe space, guys.
But, yeah.
But I do think everyone. I think everyone does a great job in their area, and that's one thing I try to be. Whilst we are maybe like, I think all promoters are competition for each other, but I try to keep things amicable, and I don't think it's in the interests of the industry or the scene for promoters to be kind of slagging each other off
kind of thing,
Yeah.
man.
and yeah.
You're all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's also, like I said, it's just the support system can be a bit iffy, but
That's it. It can be a difficult balance, but at the end of the day, we understand that it's promoter and promoter, but it's the artist that's really going to suffer for this, I think, coming into this kind of, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Environment. So it is, I think it's more about bonding together and actually try to find a way through this to support grassroots artists, as opposed to just it's the competition. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I was saying there is not really anything to do with other promoters necessarily, but I think I do think that promoters not being obstructive of each other does help. Like there are times where you maybe you'll have shows on the same night and you're trying to do better than each other, but I think that's important as well, because just in terms of artists getting opportunities, because if you're almost kind of excluded from opportunities with the promoter because you've worked with another promoter, I don't think that's
not very
the
fair.
way to go.
Yeah.
We're going to kick off. We're going to kick into another question. How do you feel about the representation of Scottish artists and genres within our own venues and festivals? And are there certain voices or genres that you think could use more exposure?
It's a loaded question.
It is a very
It's a
loaded
big one.
question.
Yeah, interesting, because you don't want to, and you do see a lot of this sort of thing around about festival season when like the poster goes out and then people will say, oh, there's not enough X artists on this bill, whatever. But sometimes the promoter will just be booking who's available, and they might have tried to book artists of the kind that people are saying there's not enough of, but they might have rejected the offer, or they might have had
We don't really
not
know
been
what's going on
available.
there, you know. Maybe.
Yeah, it's all behind the scenes, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So so it's hard to but in terms, sorry, I'm kind of I'll
It's a
stop.
very
Yeah,
broad
it's a
question,
broad
sorry.
question.
Yeah, I'll stop stuttering and try and
Oh, you're
answer
all
it. But yeah, there's no, sorry, I've lost the
No, you're
thread a
okay,
bit
man.
there.
It's all right. See, just to address this, by the way, as a podcast, this is quite daunting.
Yeah, it is. This is
It's our first one. But there's no stress, man, no pressure. Again, it's just focusing on representation, Scottish artists and genres. Certain voices or genres you think could use exposure. I don't know how to really break that down. Sorry.
No, that's
quite
all right.
quite
It's
dense.
just quite a tough one. Voices and artists that could use exposure. One thing I do think is I would like to see more, and that this is maybe made because we're a grassroots focused promoter. I think about things in this way. More grassroots artists being given opportunities at festivals. I do think I would like to see that, and you sometimes. I think lots of festivals are good in that they'll have the
kind of mini stages.
Yeah,
That's-
like the mini stages, and that does give lots of grassroots artists an opportunity to play. Sometimes it's almost kind of preordained who's going to be on there, though. So you can't accommodate everyone, because if you've got a stage with 10 slots on it and there's 300
There's a lot of
emergent, there's going to be like a lot of people that you can't include. So in terms of there's the kind of obvious things you would say in terms of unrepresented artists or genres. That, for example, you might say there's a lack of female artists sometimes on bills, and sometimes I think what you find, and I notice this as a promoter, there's quite a lot of female solo artists, but when it comes to bands, there's definitely a lot less. So sometimes you can't really control that as a promoter, because you might, if you're booking an event which is going to be like all bands, and you're not really booking any solo artists, that unfortunately it will probably be a bit male heavy.
I think, as I'm a lead singer of a band, which are all boys, but then I'm the lead singer, and I think being on a bill of like all males can feel really empowering. Of like, yeah, we got this gig, and like it makes us just go up there and like smash it.
It's pretty cool.
So I think that's definitely important to keep pushing like female-led bands. But like you say, there's definitely more coming up and about. But there was a phase of the Glasgow gigs of them just being kind of all male, unless it was solo artists, which was like quite a lot of female solo artists. So
Absolutely, and I think that goes down to almost like to sort of change that. It almost goes down to like the even before grassroots level. That's about people being inspired to So there's just that noise put in the background there, put me off. And that's almost about inspiring people to take up learning an instrument or joining. Lots of females play different instruments, but maybe aren't necessarily as interested in joining bands. And I think that happens at the even grassroots level for people growing up. If they start to see, even like similar to what we were saying about when people who maybe play an instrument come to a gig who aren't in a band and they think, oh, I'm going to start a band now. It's that kind of, so if there are some bands with females in them, then younger females will see that and think, right, I want to be in a band now. But if all you're seeing's like guys sweating, then you're like, right, but that's not really a bit of me. But if you see, oh, that's someone like me, then it's almost like you see that in football now. Like when I was at school, there'd be like one girl in the class that would play football and have to join in with the boys. Now there's like full girls football teams, and so I think it's the same thing. You see people, and then that can inspire you. So I think in years to come that won't be an issue. And just going on to the just going back to what you were saying, in terms of the numbers, because I put on a couple of bills which are singer-songwriter focused, and the bills have been all female. And someone, like, I can't remember who it was, but someone said to me, oh, that's cool that you're putting on an all-female bill. And I was like, it's not supposed to be an all-female bill. That was just a singer-songwriter bill, and the singer-songwriters that I knew or came to mind when I was booking all happened to be female. So I think that maybe will change in a few years, and hopefully it does.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
You're making waves, KB, that's it.
Yeah, hopefully.
So we need more role models like yourself.
See me on stage. So moving on, for someone starting out in music in Scotland, is there any advice that you'd give to get involved in the music scene?
So yeah, if you know people who if you want to get a band together and you've got a few mates who all play different instruments, and sometimes, like I used to be in a band when I was a teenager, and sometimes you actually have to, I remember we didn't know anyone who played bass, so I'd like an old bass in my garage, and I taught one of my mates to like some like real like rudimentary
grassroots.
We need a bass player, you game. Aye.
And so yeah, just get a few people together, and everything needs a start. So just get together, just jam, see what comes out.
It's fun, right? It always starts as a bit of fun, I think.
I loved it so much, and I do even still miss it, even though it was about 100 years ago. Just going to like practice on a Wednesday night, and you were still in school at the time, and you'd be looking forward to practicing, and then you finally get a couple of songs that sounded half decent, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to play these live. And now I think this is what we try to serve, if you like, because our focus is on grassroots music, and we have gigs which are specifically designed for bands who are just starting out. So they're more like the midweek gigs, they're kind of deliberately a bit more chilled out, so it's not as intimidating for bands who are just
got to start someone, man.
Starting, and yeah, and we try to kind of talk people, like you maybe seen this yourself when your first couple of gigs, you maybe don't really know anything about how the process works, and you get an email just with like a load of things that you don't understand that you're supposed to send in. You're like, right, I don't know what that is, and then you just and you don't really feel as though you can ask. So
it can be intimidating.
Yeah,
I think, especially when you want to promote yourself as a band that knows what they're doing and can go on stage and play a set. I was quite lucky that I joined a band with a couple of the boys that have already been in bands, so they kind of know what they're doing anyway. But I was kind of I'd leave it up to them half the time, because it would be these emails of just words on a page, and I'd be like, I don't know what you want me to say to these.
So we try to just make ourselves a bit more, try and be as approachable as possible, and if we get questions, we're always quite happy to explain them. And also just even simple things like sending out a sheet asking people for information and actually explaining what it is, rather than just saying, send your tech rider to whoever, and you're like, oh, the hell's a tech rider? and by 6 o'clock, and it's in big bold bold caps, and like when I was in a band, like none of us had a clue, and we were just playing in like church halls and things like that around Greenock, and then we got a gig in Glasgow, and we were all like 16 and 17 at the time, but we didn't realise for a start it was an 18 plus. And then
Classic.
we didn't realise, and this was back kind of like social media did exist, but it wasn't really online. Ticket sales weren't really a thing, so it was just like paper tickets that we had to go and pick up, and then we found out it was 18 plus, and we thought, all right, brilliant, we're going to struggle with these. So I think like one of the guys' big sister and her boyfriend came, and that was about it. But it was we didn't know it. It wasn't me that booked it actually. It was a singer who was you know the band Slicks.
Yes.
Yeah, so their manager, who's Robbie, the singer's big brother, he was a singer in my band, so we were in school together, and it was so I'll blame him for this. But he booked the gig. But it was, have you heard of the pay to play gigs?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was one of those, and we didn't know. So I think we had to sell whatever it was, like 30 tickets before you kind of break even. Otherwise, you need to give the promoter whatever, like the value of those tickets. And
Dodgy.
and so we didn't really understand any of this. So we just
You just went to play a gig.
For a
Yeah.
16-year-old, be like, I'm sorry, man, but no.
So we just turned up, and it was because it was an 18 plus. I remember we had to sit in. It was in a venue called, it's not there anymore. It was called Strawberry Fields, just like behind the St Enoch Centre. I think it might be a lap dancing bar now or something.
Some way to start off your career there.
Yes, a real strong start we were off to there. And the promoter said, "Oh, how many tickets did you sell?" And we said, "Oh, really sorry, we've not sold many, just because obviously we're all 16, 17, so we can't sell any to any of our mates." And then he said, "All right, that's fine." I think then it was like, "Oh, that's so that's like 180." And we're like, "Oh, brilliant, we're getting paid 180, and we only sold like 2 tickets." And he was like, "No, you need to give me 180." And we were like, I think at the time, you know that way when you're like working like part time in like the local garden
£4 an
centre
hour.
or something, I think that you've all got like 20 or 30 quid in your bank, and that's like your whole net worth. So we were all like having to go to like the bank and just lift out everything there, and it's that way where you're like, right, I now don't know how I'm going to get home or get anything to eat. And we just all then so we had to phone one of our, I can't remember, it wasn't my parents, somebody's dad came and picked us up
To the rescue.
and had to give us like another 40 quid and take us all home after it. So yeah, so that's a bad experience. So I would say try and make sure that isn't your entry into the music scene. And I don't think
Good advice.
no promoter does that anymore, just because I think once that practice became kind of common knowledge, it just got kind of trampled into the dirt where it belongs. Because so you're not going to have that experience. And I think there's some promoters may be more welcoming than others, but I don't think there's anyone who is who you're going to have like such a poor experience with. I think all the promoters now, they're used to working with younger bands, and no one would really be able to get away with doing that anymore.
It really does restrict the grassroots trying to break through to it. That honestly does not seem fair.
Yeah, and if you're a promoter, you've got to take the risk of, it's you that's chosen to put the show on. So if the show doesn't sell as many tickets as you thought it would, that's got to be on you. And if you like, that's part of the business model. If you like that model was just to try and eliminate any financial risk for the promoter and just put it on the bands. So it's like, instead of the promoter having to pay out their own pocket, they're getting the bands to pay out their own pocket. But no, you've booked the bands. Like, fair enough, if bands don't sell loads of tickets, they maybe don't get paid a lot, but they should still get something. They shouldn't be having to pay you.
Going back the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this is a great time to ask, looking forward, like into the future, what's your ideas or your vision for the future of live music in Scotland? And do you have any exciting developments or anything you'd like to promote?
Good question. So the future of live music in Scotland, I think, is really healthy, and I think there's lots of really talented artists popping up every other week, it seems. So I think the scene's in a good place. Excuse me. and there's plenty of events for them to play. Plenty of events for them to play on. There's lots of talented producers also, which is important because you want to sound good when people are listening to you. And this a little bit of a tangent, and but I think it's important, and that I know like streaming gets a lot of heat because it kind of does the payouts from it are low, but
It's
for
kind of shocking sometimes.
it is, but for a grassroots artist looking long term, it is a pretty powerful tool. Like for example, even going back to when I was in a band, like there wasn't Spotify didn't exist. It just shows how old I am. So we would have to like cut a demo and like burn off a few copies and like try and sell it at gigs, and you'd sell like I don't know, like if you, on a good day you'd sell about 5 at a gig, and you don't even know if that person ever went and listened to you. So now
want people to hear you, really.
absolutely. So really, to make it in those days, you kind of needed that like cinematic moment of like some record company exec standing up the back at the
Nodding his
venue.
head at what you were playing, going,
Yeah.
oh, this is the next best thing.
And then-
Writing out the contract as he's watching you play.
Yeah, and then coming and presenting it to you like sort of Vince McMahon style. So yeah, that. But whereas now you could be an unsigned artist who maybe have only played 3 or 4 gigs, and you could have thousands of different people all over the world have heard your music, and whilst you may not have reaped any real financial reward from that, in terms of getting yourself out there and putting yourself in a position to actually make a living from music in future, that it is a powerful tool. So I think, I think there's lots of artists who maybe wouldn't have, who have gone on to do big things, who maybe wouldn't have been discovered if it wasn't for streaming, because if it was just reliant on the old model of getting a record contract and having like a record company giving you the big push and getting you on TV programs and getting you on radio and getting you on
Set sides of
billboards.
buses and stuff.
Yeah,
It
so
goes back to what you were saying at the beginning about them putting the money into the artist that's gaining that kind of traction rather than like today.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So the scene's in a good place, and there's lots of ways
Good
for
to hear.
artists to get themselves out there, and there's lots of promoters, even people doing much bigger things than anything we do. So there's lots of fantastic opportunities for artists that are out there. In terms of us and our vision, so that's something I think about a lot, because sometimes it can seem maybe from the outside looking in like you're just putting on gigs without really having a thought in your head, just thinking, right, I'll book I don't know, I'll book this venue on the 10th of August, and then I'll just see who's available, or if someone's emailed me, I can say, oh, can you do the 10th of August? But and sometimes it is a little bit like that, but generally we try to, like, we've got the way I try to look at things is there's some much bigger promoters than us that do what they do very well, who we just can't compete with. Like for example, like DF concerts, like we are not going to be putting on anything to rival Transmit anytime soon.
You never know.
Don't forget, it was David that took down the Goliath. I mean, there's a chance.
And so what I try to do is we're not going to be bigger than them or better than them, and I do like, I've worked with a DF on, not in terms of putting events on with them, but as with artists I've managed, and I like some of the people there that I've worked with. So it's not like I'm never going to compete with them anyway. So we're never going to be a serious competitor to them or anyone like them.
But it is good that you've got the networks and the relationships that you've made with people at DF.
Absolutely, but what we try to do is we try to be different. So that's like, for example, like the gathering shows that we do.
Yeah.
So the idea behind that was, loads of bands want to play at venues like St Luke's and SWG3 and places like that, but the only opportunity to do that really was if you get a support slot on a DF show, or sometimes maybe a PCL show or a 432 show, but usually DF. And for every one of those, they probably have about 30 bands asking to get on it, maybe more sometimes, depending on what it is. So therefore it's limited as to how often you can get those opportunities. So I thought, right, well, there's a market for bands wanting to play those venues, and people like coming to those venues because it's nice going to, like, St Luke's is, for example, is a cool venue. SWG3 is a cool venue. Like, sometimes the small venues are great as well, but sometimes it's cool to, as an artist, play on the big stage. And
Yeah, 100%.
So I thought, right, well, why don't we use those venues, and instead of it being like a headline show for somebody, we could get 4 or 5 bands doing like half-hour slots, make it a kind of mini festival type thing. And just kind of, we've got like a DJ in between sets and things like that, and a wee bit of kind of razzmatazz about it, and kind of promote it as a kind of festival style
Yeah,
build.
it's cool.
So that's the way we try and look at things rather than copying what other people are doing, because I think sometimes it's easy just to go in and look at what people are doing what people who are already doing the thing that you want to do are doing, and then just copy that. So that's what we try not to do, so we try and kind of play in our own space a little bit. So really going forward, just to kind of expand on that and offer new opportunities for artists that maybe don't currently exist. And also just what I really want to do in 2025 is just try to promote our shows more broadly, so that we build it. Because what we try to do is we see ourselves as a platform for emerging artists. So if you come, for example, The Gathering, you've got if you're playing on The Gathering, loads of people who maybe haven't came to see you before will see you. So we want that to happen on all of our shows, but not just people who are there to see the other bands, but build that kind of more general audience. So I've got a bit of a strategy which will be rolled out through 2025 as to how to increase that, just through working with different partners. So we've got some partners already who we work with, but we've not really got things going properly the way I planned to just yet. So like with like HMV Glasgow, and we're going to do some things with them and a few other organisations. So people who use those companies or will be attracted to our events. I can't go into it in too much detail
it sounds
just
cool.
yet. And, yeah, just so that there's almost like that, rather than it just being people who are specifically there to see one band that's playing on the bill. There's people who are just coming to see the show, and therefore the artists benefit from it. And I'm not going to tell lies, we benefit from it as well, because more tickets get sold. So that's really the plan, just to try and and I'm sure new ideas will come to my head. So I'm kind of I get about 10 ideas a minute, but not all of them work. So sometimes something will come to my head when I'm driving or something, and then
Usual.
yeah, and then the ones that actually put like the numbers into a spreadsheet, I think, right, yeah, we'll probably lose about £4,000 if we do that. So yeah, let's not try that one.
It sounds extremely cool, your future plans, and we cannot thank you enough for coming over and talking to us about the Scottish live scene, and it's been super interesting.
It's been phenomenal. Thank you.
No, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, check us out on social media at Sound Barriers on Facebook and TikTok, Sound Barriers Podcast on Instagram, and S Barrier Pod on Twitter/X.